Hello everybody, my name is Daulton Nelson and today I'd like to talk about a game I just beat. That game being Mischief Makers for the Nintendo 64. Mischief Makers was developed by Treasure, published by Enix and Nintendo, and it is a 2.5D action platformer. Throughout the year, I've been slowly trying to catch up on the gamography of the developer Treasure, whose games up to this point have consistently entertained me and stick out in my mind. After playing one of the company's more well-known titles, Ikaruga, I wanted to play something that seemed a little bit more obscure and a little more outside of Treasure's usual experiences. Enter Mischief Makers. When I was looking at this game online, it seemed like it would be a perfect candidate. Treasure released this title a year into the 3D era of video gaming, which generally was a tough time when it came to companies transitioning well into this new technology. And although Treasure's games have had their share of humor, Mischief Makers by comparison looked like a bright and colorful cartoon with its almost absurd and surreal aesthetics. With this context, I concluded that Mischief Makers would absolutely be the next Treasure game I would be playing, and I'm very glad I did. Mischief Makers is a very fun and exciting video game that had me smiling throughout its duration. There is so much creativity and energy put into each and every stage of the game. In fact, the way this game was made kind of makes Mischief Makers play like a Saturday morning cartoon TV show. Each stage takes a level design approach similar to games like Yoshi's Island or Pool Panic, where almost every stage offers up something different, whether it be a new mechanic not yet seen before, a new structure of stage, or a general different spin on the game itself. And on top of each stage is the saturated, animated aesthetic, where the assets in the stages are pretty weird. The game is especially keen on the specific ghost-esque face being put onto almost everything in the game. Each stage also features some sort of narrative tie-in to the main story, or dialogue that the player can read through, which I wasn't expecting from this game. In fact, there is rarely any dialogue in the game that I would find to be uninteresting. A lot of Treasure's writing is very engaging and funny. Speaking of which, humor is a big part of the Mischief Makers experience as well. This game is hilarious. Just to give you a taste, there is a kid that can turn into a giant playable block monster, there's a copycat of you that looks ridiculous, there's a talking hawk in cyber armor who calls himself Dr. Smoothlove, and the twist of this game is so ridiculous that I still can't believe that it's the way it is. Mischief Makers always managed to make me laugh with what it was doing in its game. Now, with the amount of content within the game, there was a lot of space that was most likely used within the cart, so a lot of stages within Mischief Makers are short, which I think is for the better. A great stage within Makers will introduce itself and its concept, have you run through it once, and then leave on a good note. When it works, this compact level design has each stage feeling unique and memorable. However, when it doesn't work, the stages can be too short, and the concept that is introduced in the stage can feel shallow or even non-existent. That being said, Mischief Makers isn't a short game to beat. It took me a standard 8 hours to beat the game as a whole. So the short stages that work well feel numerous and more present than the weaker stages of the game. Stepping away from the stages, Mischief Makers is very fun to control and play as well, which makes sense given the company's history with the action platformer genre. In Mischief Makers, you control Marina Liteyears, the Ultra-Intergalactic-Cybot G, a somewhat spunky heroine who finds herself and her friend Professor Theo being the victims of constant attacks and kidnappings by an evil empire. This empire's main force is made up of the peaceful Clancer race of the Planet Clancer, who are so nice and peaceful that they are easily persuaded by the evil empire to do evil deeds. Marina's goal throughout the entire game is to fend off the evil empire and its army while trying to save the kidnapped Professor Theo. As an action platformer, Marina can move and jump to navigate the stages in the game. As her action, Marina's main ability is to grab and shake things. She can even grab certain objects and throw herself in a diagonal direction to get to hard-to-reach areas. Shaking things reveal items within the shaken object, whether they be jewels, or a bomb, or even activating an effect like spawning a certain object that wasn't there before. In a lot of ways, Marina's moveset here reminds me a lot of Sega's Rise Star. Marina also has quite a bit of mobility to her. Players can either double tap a direction or press one of the camera buttons to do a boost. This boost propels Marina further in the pressed direction, allowing access to more hard-to-reach areas, and allowing players to move through stages quickly. Marina also has a roll and a roll jump in her arsenal, so the options for what the player can do feel plentiful. Controlling Marina for the most part feels like a blast, although I would say some of the movement can feel a little stiff, especially the upwards boost, which I wasn't quite able to master because it could be hard to execute correctly. Another important aspect of the game is the different colored jewels that can be found throughout the stages. Each colored jewel does something different. The blue jewel restores a tiny amount of health, while the green jewel restores a much larger amount. The red jewel is used for continues if you die in the game. The way continues work in the game is a little special. There are 3 types of continues, each of which allows you to restart the stage with a certain amount of health, and the more health you want, the more the continue will cost. And finally there is the yellow jewel, which is the secret collectible in each stage. Collecting all of these will get you something good at the end of the game, so be vigilant, as some of these are hard to get. These jewels add a lot of replayability to the game, which is icing on the cake, given how fun this game is already. The only other negative criticism I could throw at the game is that I found the soundtrack to be a little weak and sounded very aged, although I can see my opinion changing if I come across a worse Treasure soundtrack, but that criticism is small compared to how much I loved this game. Mischief Makers made me feel like a kid that was going on this cartoonish and humorous adventure, filled with fun characters and fun action. So, with that, I'm going to give Mischief Makers a final score of an 8 out of 10. If the weaker stages had more to them, and the controls felt a little better, this game would have knocked it out of the park. But for what's here, it would be very hard not to find some sort of entertainment within Mischief Makers. Definitely give this game a shot if you have the chance. It is Daulton recommended. That concludes my review of Mischief Makers. If you like my reviews, you can like, comment, or subscribe. I also have social media links down in the description below, as well as a link to my online portfolio where you can see video game design works that I have done. And with that out of the way, please make sure to have a nice day.